Anyway, let's talk politics, because yesterday our political editor, Christopher Hope, sat down with a man who hopes to be Prime Minister in just a couple of weeks, leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer.
Yes, Sir Keir was answering the questions that you sent in. So please do keep them coming, because this is the first of many interviews to come with party leaders. Now, in this exclusive, he refused 4 times to say that he would pay for private health care for his children, even if they badly needed treatment and were stuck on an NHS waiting list.
Meanwhile, Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, has taken part in an interview with the BBC. He suggested the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding NATO.
Well, let's take a look back at the last 24 hours in politics.
I pay for private healthcare to effectively jump the waiting list.
Yes.
I wouldn't. The idea of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who is responsible for bringing waiting lists down,
yes,
then saying to the public, but so far as I'm concerned, I'm going to jump the loop.
But you can afford to. Most people on a good wage do afford it and pay for it.
If I am, elected in to serve as Prime Minister, my job is to bring those waiting lists down, and I'm not going to at the same time say, but for me, I'm going to jump the queue.
This is a man who tried to overturn the result of the Brexit referendum, who twice urged everyone to make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister, and who ran on a series of pledges to be Labour leader that he cynically then abandoned. My friends, because he has such a past, he doesn't deserve to decide your future.
If people know the outcome of something and they bet on it, I think that's immoral.
We've provoked this war. Of course it's his fault. He's used what
But we provoked the invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, and very interestingly, once again, 10 years ago when I predicted this, by the way, I'm the only person in British politics that predicted what would happen. And of course, everyone said I was a pariah for daring to suggest it. George Robertson, former Labour cabinet minister, who went on to become the Secretary General of NATO, has in the last couple of weeks said the war is a direct result of EU expansion.
Well, let's talk to political commentator John Oxley, who's here with us this morning. Good to see you, John. Can we talk about Farage first and foremost? Is he just a man proffering a view that some do hold, or is this one of those moments he's going to look back on and through gritted teeth?
It is a view that some people hold, but it is also very much one of the lines that the Russians want us to believe. And the reality of NATO expansion is these countries that join NATO were desperate to do so, and we've seen that recently again with Finland and Sweden, because of the fear of Russian expansion. So I think it's wrong, and I think particularly when you look at how popular support for Ukraine has been in this country, I think it's a very foolish thing for Nigel Farage to be saying, and I think it could become a bit of a difference point between him and the Conservatives as they fight the final few weeks of this election.
Yeah, I mean, even though a lot of people might think it's a reasonable point of view, and we often get that coming from our audience, actually, the problem is you get hoisted by these things, don't you? It's a bit like Keir Starmer being asked time and again whether he would have private healthcare in any circumstance for his family. Sometimes you just you have to live for the rest of the campaign with a question that now it sort of just is almost going to shoot you down every time.
Yes, absolutely. These things take in a life of their own, and what you might think reasonable, other people have a different spin on. But I think these comments in particular, when we get past the election and there's a bit more of a squabble about what influence Nigel Farage and Reform have on the Conservative Party after the election, these sort of questions about where they stand on national security, and we've seen a lot of Tory ministers sort of really calling Farage out on this, could become a real thing that they pick up on.
I mean, he's been described, it's Ben Wallace, former Defence Secretary, who said he's more Chamberlain than Churchill. Now, that actually is quite a stinging comment.
Yes, it absolutely is, but it speaks to this idea that, is the answer to Russian aggression appeasement and giving them what they want, or is it standing up to them? And, certainly the Conservative Party have really believed in standing up to them, and we've seen that through the support through Ukraine, and before that, things like the Salisbury poisoning as well. This is not just a distant thing. It's something that, if the West provoked the attack on Ukraine, did the West also provoke, British citizens being attacked on English soil?
But it helps, doesn't it? It helps the whole conversation to try and understand your opponent, your enemy.
Yes, that's true. And there's nothing wrong in trying to understand what is going on inside Russian heads. But I think one of the things that you have to be clear when you're saying this is the Putin interpretation of what happened with NATO is it's very informed by their worldview, and it completely ignores that following the collapse of the Warsaw Pact, you had all these nations newly emerging, newly free, and what did they want? They wanted to be like the West, and they wanted the security of joining up with the West. And surely we believe that is a good thing, and we should encourage it.
Can we talk about Starmer? Is he being... what's his strategy now? I mean, talking to our political editor, Christopher Hope, and sticking to that line, under no circumstances would I pay for private healthcare, even if my children were seriously ill. I mean, it's frankly ridiculous in that anyone would scrabble about for whatever pennies they possibly could if that was the only option that they had for urgent care. But he's being quite robotic on it. Is that because he doesn't want to freestyle, if you like, because that risks falling into a bigger trap?
I think it's partly that. I think, you bring out these lines, but also, you can only assume what political parties do in the background is they test these lines, they use them on focus groups. So I imagine there's probably a lot of advice going to him that actually, this is quite a good line. People on the right might attack him, but for a lot of people, the sort of people he's trying to appeal to, many people who could probably never even dream of affording private healthcare should they need it, then this probably tests quite well with them, this idea that you support the NHS and you wouldn't jump the queue.
But he is sort of self-confessedly showing that he's politically expedient, because when he's asked about why he was such an ardent supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, he's more or less said because that was the right thing to say at the time.
Yes.
Not what he believed.
No. But one of the interesting things about this, I was looking at some stuff from a focus group again, and actually that seems to be landing with people. And there's this sense that, well, that's your job, you get on with it. And, we've all been in the position of covering for a boss we didn't necessarily like or was doing the right thing. But obviously it does make him look a bit, as you say, politically expedient. But the thing is, when you're doing well and when people like you, they don't hold things against you. And, the Tories are in the sort of converse problem that when people really dislike you, everything you do that's bad gets amplified and gets the worst take on it. I
mean, it wouldn't be so bad. I mean, there is an understanding, and you can see it when politicians, people do toe the party line and all that sort of thing. The difference is Rachel Reeves, who obviously is crucial to their campaign, she stepped down. She didn't serve in a Corbyn cabinet, did she? She sort of removed herself from that and has come back once he's gone, which seemed to be, that's a point of principle, isn't it? That's something which some people could look at and applaud.
Yes, and I think that's true. And, there are plenty of political people who really damage their own careers. Keir Starmer has not chosen to do that under Corbyn, and it looks like it's paying off for him. But, it does raise interesting questions. And, we were talking about, Ukraine in relation to Nigel Farage. There's a question there. Jeremy Corbyn has said many similar things. And had Labour been in government in 2022 when the full-scale invasion happened, what would Keir Starmer have done then if Jeremy Corbyn didn't believe in giving military aid, for example?
Yeah, every one of the leaders at the moment has got a problem with the next 2 weeks of interrogation from journalists and from members of the public. They've all got an Achilles heel, really, haven't they? And sometimes several.
Absolutely. And, the other thing about this period of the campaign is when things get really intense, everyone's tired, they've been doing this for 4 weeks already. It's the point where you do start to slip up. You've got more chance of those unguarded moments. And with just 2 weeks left, they can actually have a really outsized impact because the last group of people who are getting to make their minds up are thinking about this. There's still a good chunk of voters that have not decided which way they're going to go. So making a mistake in these last 2 weeks can make a huge difference.
Which is why there can be potentially an element of sympathy for the Prime Minister. I mean, apart from his own massive cock-up off of D-Day, everything that's now happening around him actually isn't his fault necessarily, but it's landing the party in a whole load of trouble.
That's absolutely true. But on the other hand, and we saw this quite a lot with the Partygate scandal as well. If you're the person at the top, you're there, you're meant to be setting the culture, you're meant to be making sure the rules are followed, you're meant to be keeping a grip on things.
Yeah.
And so if your inner circle, particularly with the betting thing, if this is his inner circle, if he's not got control of that, then I'm not sure how much he can really wash his hands of it, because ultimately, if you're the sort of person that gives the no messing about here, don't embarrass us like this from day one, these things tend not to happen. It's his team.
It's like Partygate all over again, really, isn't it? It's the fact that it looks as though the leader doesn't have very good control over people who are just running amok now.
Yeah, and it's absolutely that if you're not sort of setting the standards and people aren't whipped in by you, then, can you really run a country?
OK.
John, it's like
thank you very much indeed.
The Tory battle bus at the moment. Have you seen the picture in The Guardian? In The Guardian, I can never... Oh, here we are. It's a picture from the Tory battle bus.
Well, they all look very happy.
And, and guess who's with them? It's our very own Catherine Forster. Hang on a minute, where's the picture? There we go. I don't know if you can see it well enough. They're all very happy in that particular picture. And there on the right of the picture is Catherine Forster.
Looking delighted as well.
Yeah.
Which I'm surprised.
I'm surprised it's in The Guardian, were you going to say?
Well, no, I'm not surprised. No, I'm surprised Catherine looks happy, because I know she's absolutely exhausted at the moment.
It is a relentless campaign.
She's perhaps just delirious.
Yes.
She, as all of our political team, going from pillar to post and trying to cover every little thing.
They really are, yeah.